Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on whichever part of the world you are at. So, this is the third session in the series of programs organized by LEAD in collaboration with several other organizations on supporting women led rural micro enterprises through COVID and beyond. So the very first session organized in the first week of June focused on the immediate impact and how women-led enterprises could help themselves or how others could help them to cope with the initial aftermath of the COVID crisis, the impact of the lockdown, and providing immediate financial support, etc. The second one, organized by the end of June, where we had specialists from enterprise development community. They provided their perspectives on how enterprises and women entrepreneurs could be supported and how financial intermediation could be actually expanded to make sure that they get not only immediate support but also beyond that, and also took a little bit of a medium term view on capacity building and how innovative technologies could be brought into play to support women enterprises. So in a way, the session 3 would be a continuation of these two, but once again, sort of while re-emphasizing the fact that the COVID itself hasn't really gone away, and Indian states and different districts have been imposing lockdown, lifting them, reimposing them, etc. So in a sense, the shocks are continuing, and therefore, how to help women entrepreneurs to learn to live with this as one of the various risks that they face. And in the process, we have participants and panelists from different parts of the world also helping us through and seeing how other countries are coping with this and how other women entrepreneurs in other parts of the world are reacting to this and responding to it, etc. So before we sort of go into the panel itself, it is my great pleasure and privilege because the Ministry of Rural Development and the National Rural Livelihood Mission have been very supportive of this of these three sessions. And in keeping with that, we have a distinguished civil servant, Ms. Alka Upadhyay, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Rural Development, present here to address the session, to begin the session. She is an Indian Administrative Service Officer since 1990. And she is, as I mentioned earlier, Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Rural Development. Prior to this assignment, she was a Joint Secretary in charge of Rural Connectivity and Skills in the Ministry of Rural Development itself, Government of India. She has worked very extensively in the field of rural development, in a regulatory capacity, and has spearheaded the implementation of various development programs of the Government of India. Since 2003, as Secretary in the state government, she has been involved in policy design and decision-making roles across various sectors like personnel, finance, health, rural development. And in her current role, she looks after the Rural Livelihood Program, which aims to promote capacity building and skill development of rural women to catalyze opportunities for livelihoods and create an enabling environment for rural entrepreneurship in general, with special emphasis on women. So without much further ado, I hand over the stage to Ms. Alka Upadhyay for her opening remarks to kickstart the panel discussion. I will come back after she is finished her address to talk about the overall setting for today's session and introduce the other panelists to you as well. Over to Ms. Alka Upadhyay. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Anant, for introducing me to the very distinguished bank, the World Bank, and the lead at Krea University for organizing this. A very good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, as Anant said, across different time zones. And here I am to talk about what we need to do to promote entrepreneurship amongst women. So it's a very difficult, I would say, premise to work on because When I am talking about the really deprived, poor, and the last mile women residing in the villages, who till some time back did not even have access to education, to proper schooling, to proper health facilities. It is only of late that the universal coverage of health and education has reached these women. Through the National Rural Livelihood Mission, we have been trying to touch upon the lives of these women. What we have been trying to do is get these women organized, build their capacity, and I always say build their confidence. And this is something I'm very proud to share, that today, when we talk to the rural women who have been organized into these self-help groups, you find them really robust, these self-help groups to be really robust, and women full of confidence who are able to negotiate a lot of things for themselves, and whether be it their rights, their entitlements, or their path ahead for enterprise development. A lot of things also have happened parallelly, not only in the rural development area, but also in the sphere of banking, in the sphere of MSME promotion, so on and so forth. So currently, I would say there's a very organic path which is available, or an organic linkage which is available for this enterprise development based out of rural areas and amongst women. So COVID has actually become an opportunity, I would say, for a lot of activities that are happening currently in India. And there have been various announcements. The government has come forth in giving the Atmanirbhar package for making people a little more resilient towards this impact of COVID, which has been there for quite some time now, and the ripple effect is being seen or witnessed in the economy now because of the layoffs, the supply chains broken, so on and so forth. I'll just start over here. While there was a resilience package being built all across, and people were waiting for the government to give them diktats, tell them in which direction to move, it was so heartening to see that our self-help group women, they charted their own path. We did not tell them anything, and all of a sudden we found that our self-help group women had become entrepreneurs. They were making masks, they were making sanitizers, they were making the PPE kits, they were also doing community kitchens, and so on and so forth. Because the local supply chain was broken, they also jumped up, and they were providing, they started becoming the local supply chains for supply of vegetables, food grains, so on and so forth. This to me was the most heartening thing to see, because this came without any financial infusion, but this did not come with any kind of financial dole or subsidy. The community fund which was available with them was what they started using. And this, in a way, makes me believe that easy fungibility of money to begin with is very important for rural women to start their enterprise. Of course, it cannot be a big chunk of money which goes down the subsidy route, because for the past many years, Government of India has moved away from the subsidy route. Whatever it is in the form of direct benefit transfer against a particular service. For example, the gas connections, that is one of the most successful DBT interventions. But for a first generation rural woman to become an entrepreneur, to expect her to have a credit history and to get loan out of the banks is like dreaming a very distant dream. So, but we've had this community build up, we've had this inter group lending, so a kind of credit history has slowly built in. The small funds that we give by way of community enterprise fund or the community investment fund, they have been used to buy, 2 units of backyard poultry, 2 units of cattle, and so on and so forth. The recovery is 100% as far as the community investment fund is concerned. And seeing this behavior, the banks are also now willing to give out huge credit to our women. and it is a figure no less than almost 3 lakh crore, which has now been given to our women in the form of loans. And the repayment even today stands at about 98.5%, whereas we are seeing businesses crumble, we are seeing farmers being totally oppressed, farmers being in a state of stress. But our women have earned that resilience where they know how to spend this money. Now, this is just the beginning or the building block, I would say. If we are to move forward, we need to create an environment where small entrepreneurship can be encouraged. So, very small intervention we did, and which was in the form of the Startup Village Entrepreneurship Program. Again, there we gave some around 5 crore rupees per block to be used for enterprise financing. Even there, we saw that the average return was about 99%. So people took money and they gave back money. They were able to set up enterprises. About 55 to 60% of the enterprises are again owned by women. They are running those enterprises. They are now gradually building their credit history to now move to the banks to get funds for their enterprise. The environment is good today. The credit guarantee funds which have been set up for promotion of MSME will definitely go a long way in promoting our women. Now, when I talk about the credit guarantee fund, I'll also like to say something very, not innovative, but major step ahead, that the collateral-free guarantee loan, with the collateral-free loans have also been, the limit has been increased for the self-help group women, all in a direction to give some amount of credit. Now, I'll move on to the next pillar as to what can be done for promoting enterprise. So, our experience here has been that non-farm enterprise is rather difficult, although I would say the value addition is much more when we talk about non-farm produce or we go into non-farm enterprise development. But that, and especially in the current times, it is a little difficult to start, to maintain, and to find markets. But I was just hearing the news today, the FMCG goods have picked up immensely. The MNCs or the bigger companies in India, they're also making a fortune out of FMCG. So we see right now in the current situation and also in times to come that there is a lot of scope as far as the agri value chains are concerned. We need to build upon our agri value chains. So when I talk about agri value chains, I mean two things over here. One is better management of your resources or the women's resources, which we help the women learn and adapt through our Mahila Kisan Shakti-Karan Pariyojana, which is for natural farming. We don't say zero-based natural farming, zero-budget natural farming, because then, all of a sudden the productivity takes a hit, but better management of resources, better cropping practices, integrated farming systems where you have some layering of crops, where you have cereals, then you have pulses, then you have vegetables, you have horticulture, you have some poultry unit, backyard poultry or some duckery, things like that. These are and because we have to realize day-to-day cash is absolutely essential for people to sustain in the current times. So depending on two crops is something on which we cannot base our entire development theory. It has to be now spread, and it has now got to be in a way bifurcated in such a manner that all our earnings, the majority of the earnings are from different sources, so which will give some kind of a resilience as well. So when we talk about agri value chains, there are 2 or 3 interventions which will be required. The interventions will come, one from better cropping, which I've already spoken about. The second is farm gate processing and a ability to hold or store your product so that there is no distress selling happening. Better kind of graded products go into the market, which will get better money also. So there is a lot of collaboration that is possible between the Ministry of Food Processing over here, where now they are ready to finance our SLGs for farm gate processing. We are now working in the direction of developing clusters, identification of clusters one district, one product. So the synergies are now being built. So MSME has identified certain clusters. Food processing ministry has identified certain clusters. So we don't start de novo. We intervene there. We see where our producer groups are, give our producer groups a little bit of finance to be able to manage small things like the moisture meters or the sieves, etc., and some storage facilities. So these are the interventions at the producer group level. Once we have these producer groups, so I'll just give you some numbers. We have about 86,000 producer groups as of now. Of these producer groups that we have, 17,000 of them, they are doing some kind of a direct market facing. And products, they are aggregating the products and selling the products in better markets. Now, we also will need to see that these producer groups are slowly organized into FPOs. The current environment talks a lot about FPOs, but or to have the right kind of people mobilized. So Agriculture Ministry is has said that they would promote 10,000 FPOs in 1 year. For Agriculture Ministry to promote these FPOs, it is the SRLMs, the RSHGs, which can be the initiating blocks, because here is a community which is cohesive. It is a common farmer interest group which is doing some kind of similar practice for growing maybe some crops or processing certain things. So then we move on to the FPO side. So then the food processing industry is, so we will have to work on the agri value chain, which is going to be of paramount importance over, I think, for the development of our micro enterprises in the rural areas. But each of the state now has to come forth with a plan to aggregate for aggregation. Aggregation both of the community, both of, and as well as that of the commodity. So community, commodity, credit, everything has to be linked together to be able to give a successful model. I will just stop over here, but before I leave, I just want to highlight one of the other things. Number of enterprises, Kerala, Bihar, they have come up with very innovative ideas, getting into the service sector. So service sector is something which we can look at. The servicing of canteens, the paramedical facilities, even in the current COVID times, there is a huge demand both in the urban setting as well as in the rural setting to be able to cater things like meals, because when families get affected, families are in the hospitals. So there is an enterprise over there. Kerala took this opportunity and they have, a massive program of running these canteens. Bihar is doing just the same. So service sector also interventions are going to be very, very important now. And especially because we are seeing that the bigger players, they are crumbling under the loans, credit, absence of labor, migrants, etc. These things are happening. We have been, because I just mentioned the word migrant, the government has also taken care to do the Atmanirbhar package and the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package, in which we gave some ex gratia payment to our self-help group members and also to the old and aged and infirm people. The other important thing that has happened, some of these states, 6 states have been identified where the migrant crisis is huge today. And in these states, to be able to give employment, a lot of work is, this thing is being emphasized upon in creating infrastructure works, starting of infrastructure work, so that people who have moved from the urban areas, they are able to get work according to their choice, and many of them have moved back from the urban areas to rural areas and who were engaged in construction activities. So that is one of the things happening. And I mean, this I'm just saying why these construction activities are also going to have a ripple effect on the economy. The women who are in the villages, they are now going to work in Manrega. Manrega, in fact, I'm happy to share with you, 55 to 60% of our women who are not involved in enterprises, they are moving to Manrega. So there is a segregation happening. People are doing construction work, people are doing earth work or water conservation works in Manrega, and then there is this huge lot of people whose capacities have been built who will be doing this enterprise development. So it's the entire basket which has to be taken care of. So I think I have exceeded my time or maybe within time, but thank you so much to kickstart this discussion, and I really look forward to getting the views or hearing the views of the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Upadhyay. In fact, ma'am, you have partially lightened my workload by setting the context far more elaborately and extensively and even authentically than I could have done. So in that sense, you haven't eaten into the time, but you have actually enriched the discussion. So thank you very much for that. In fact, there is one question which someone had correctly posed, which I thought I would request you to answer before I move on to introducing the rest of the panelists and to the panel discussion itself. This question is from Mr. Raghav Raghunathan, and he's asking whether self-help group promoted enterprises have MSME status. Because in his understanding, even the FPCs registered under the Companies Act are not considered MSME and therefore not eligible for the credit guarantee scheme for the MSMEs.
Okay, great question. So we realize that if we are really to occupy the entrepreneurial space, we need to formalize. Formalization is very essential. So that is the first thing we started doing since last year. And now 20,000 of our members, they have, or the self-help groups, they have now registered on the MSME portal, the Udyog Aadhaar. They have got that. So the PAN numbers, the GST registrations, etc., all that work has been done. So to answer your question, yes, they are eligible to MSME regime of funding, provided the formalization happens, and which we are moving. So about 20,000 of our members are already onto the Udyog Aadhaar.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that clarification. So now, with Ms. Alka Upadhyay helping us set the stage so beautifully, it makes the task easier for us. She spoke about the importance of money fungibility, multiple crop rotations, and also the innovative spirit and the resilience with which women entrepreneurs moved on to making other products, etc. So clearly speaking, and I mean, towards the end of her remarks, in her response to this Q&A, she did stress the importance of formalization. And as we all know very well, that the two cornerstones of the Government of India's Atmanirbhar Bharat package that was announced in May were two things. One was the redefinition of what constituted micro, small, and medium enterprises. Clearly, the investment limits have been increased. The distinction between manufacturing and services has been done away with. And also the new criteria of sales turnover introduced. So if companies exceeded, if enterprises exceeded any one of those two criteria, then they would go on to the next category from micro to small and small to medium. And these numbers are 1 crore and 5 crores, 10 crores and 50 crores, and 50 and 250 crores. So 1, 10 and 50 are the investment limits. 5, 50 and 250 are the sales turnover limits for micro, small, and medium enterprises respectively. So that is one. The second element of the government support to the micro, small, and medium enterprises is the credit facility, where the government guarantees the payment. Of course, it is not available for first-time borrowers, if I'm not mistaken, but those who have a good credit standing and whose aggregate credit exposure is not more than 25 crores with the banking system, whether it is a working capital loan or a term loan, together, if it does not exceed 250 million Indian rupees, roughly equivalent to around a little over $3 million, but 25 crores in Indian rupee terms. And that is, I think, getting disbursed as we speak. More than half the money has been disbursed. And in fact, probably, and this statistic is probably not yet out, we would be interested to see whether women entrepreneurs have been in the forefront of making use of this or not. And if anything, what stands in their usage. So these are all the important things. But more than that, as the additional secretary put it so well, from a long run perspective, formalization is the key. So that, and that means they are part of the mainstream, not only in terms of credit availability, but also for tapping into the network of the government schemes, not only for credit, but also for technology and other supporting purposes, etc. It's very important that enterprises register themselves and they get a GST registration number, etc. All those things, they may appear daunting in the short run, but in the medium to long run, those are the ways in which MSMEs can actually start to grow and become small or medium or large enterprises down the road. So with those initial remarks, and given the amount of time that we have, I'm going to introduce the rest of the panelists. We have, as you would expect, we have a very highly distinguished panel here. It's my pleasure to introduce all of them. First, I introduce Ms. Shri Vyas. She is the Managing Director of Shri Mahila Seva Sahakari Bank, SEWA Bank, and she has been leading it since 1986. Initially, she worked as a financial analyst with the Central Bank of India prior to joining SEWA Bank. She has been very instrumental launching this very first financial literacy program in SEWA back in 2001 to create awareness and facilitating financial inclusion, in addition to designing products to meet the financial needs of women. She is a recipient of the Outstanding Women Entrepreneur Award given by the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry back in 1993-94. She is the Executive Director in Indian School of Microfinance Women. She is a member of the Advisory Committee of the Securities and Exchange Board of India, and she is a Chartered Accountant by training. As of 2019, she's been appointed as the Independent Director to the Board of the Mumbai Stock Exchange. I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Vaishali Nigam Sinha. She had spent a decade in Wall Street and then in London as an investment banker. She returned to India to become a social entrepreneur. She's the chairperson of the Confederation of Indian Industries National Committee on Women Empowerment and Indian Women Network. And she is the Chief Sustainability, CSR and Communication Officer at Renew Power, which is India's largest renewable energy independent power producer. As you would expect, she is very deeply engaged with industry bodies, think tanks, educational institutions. She's also a member of the United Nations, Governing Council of the United Nations Global Compact Network India. She's the chairperson of the Gender Committee, and she chairs multiple steering committees and forums in CII. She's a recipient of the CSR Leadership Award in 2015. She is passionate about climate change. She holds a master's degree in public policy from Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. It's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Deepti Ravula. She has had a successful 15-year career in the United States, working with the technology giants like Nokia, Atheros, which is now Qualcomm, and Lightpoint. She was appointed CEO of WE Hub, Women Entrepreneurial Hub, since its inception in 2017. The Women Entrepreneurship Hub is India's first state-led incubator to foster and promote women entrepreneurs to start up, scale, and accelerate global market access. She envisions creating a work environment that is gender neutral, constructing economic independence as a tool for empowerment. She's a strong proponent of girls in STEM and women in decision-making spaces. minority person in this context here in terms of the male representation. Along with me, we have Mr. Rolf Bent. He is the practice manager for the joint IFC IBRD Global Practice Finance Competitiveness and Innovation. He is based in Delhi, and he is responsible for advising and convening services in South Asia with respect to the Project Finance Competitiveness and Innovation Program. His clients include, naturally, given a multilateral institution that he represents, his clients include government, central banks, sectoral organizations, and the private sector. He has been with the World Bank for more than 10 years, and he has more than 30 years of experience in financial and the private sector, with specific focus on competitiveness, financial inclusion, and finance for development. He holds a master's degree in industrial economics from Darmstadt University in Germany, and he has also done postgraduate studies at the German Development Institute. Ms. Subbalakshmi Nandi, she will be delivering the concluding remarks, is the Senior Program Officer for Gender Equality, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She is currently the Senior Program Officer, and prior to joining the Gates Foundation earlier this year, she was the Director for Policy at the International Center for Research on Women Asia. She's a feminist development professional with over 18 years of experience in the United Nations and with civil society organizations. She has worked on diverse issues of gender equality and women's rights. Her work involves research, policy, advocacy, program management, with focus on gender mainstreaming and empowering the most marginalized rural communities of South Asia. As for myself, I am currently Distinguished Visiting Professor of Economics at Krea University, member part-time of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister Government of India, and I'm based in Singapore. I'm also advisor. It's my pleasure to be an advisor to lead at Krea University. So without much further ado, I'm going to invite the panelists to speak. Not more than 5 minutes, please. My first speaker would be Ms. Shri Vyas, and she will be followed by Ms. Vaishali Nigam, Ms. Deepti Ravla, and then Mr. Rolf Bent. I will be asking questions immediately after the speak, maybe 1 or 2 questions before I move on to the next speaker, and then hopefully we will have the audience participating with their questions as well. Over to Ms. Shri Vyas. Thank you.
So thank you for inviting me here, and it was very nice to listen to both of you, to Madam and yourself. And you know, as you already said, I'm working with unorganized sector workers and particularly rural women since many years. And you know, the characteristics are that, you know, they are entrepreneurial, they are risk takers, they are good learners, they are you know, they are quick learners also, and they can do lots of activities, and that is what we have learned so far. What we have seen is that, you know, from a small SHG to now they have also come to, you know, FPOs, where they have started FPOs. Also many FPOs we have started. We have also one for-profit company which is called Rudy, where we are bringing all women are bringing their agriculture products to one state, one place, and then it is processed. Also there are retail workers who have been then sending it to all selling it. So it is basically, you know, it is giving livelihood to all the three kind of people. And we have also now started working with warehouses so that they can put their products there also. But when Madam was talking about SHGs, you know, I would like to say about something about this, that this SHGs would not have happened, and now it is 1 crore. This would not have happened if, of course, NGOs have started working on it, and women are very strong and they have learned this. But the best thing which was there were 2 kind of interventions which were done. One was it was NABARD. When NABARD learned that, you know, these SHGs are going on well, they almost kind of adopted all those SHGs, and the first thing with this was that they had a unit of SHGs, and you know, hand-holding support was given by SHG by NABARD to an extent, I have seen that, they have been going to, all those officers were going in the area, they were learning how SHGs are working. Not only that, but they were also giving advice like auditing and monitoring, all kind of things. So this kind of one nodal agency, or whatever you call it, if it works along with whatever activities are happening, that would definitely help them. But the second thing was also the RBI, the policymakers. RBI had also intervened. The first thing was that they were not registered and the accounts were not opened in banks. So they had a circular which they decided that this should be considered as an as organization, and their account should be opened. So that was the first thing. And second thing, that banks can lend to them. So what I'm saying is that unless this kind of interventions, and it is in depth, kind of interventions are coming by policymakers as well as maybe whatever kind of development banks and other organizations, it would definitely help that women can grow and grow. The second activity is the dairy activities, and there also what we are seeing is that the dairy work is now going so well, and that is also because of so much of intervention at every stage. Now, of course, FPOs are also very good, and that is what is happening. So what we have, what I feel is that, unless there is a relevant capacity building programs, whoever does it, whether it is NGOs are doing or whoever is doing, and handholding support, relevant handholding support is given, and finally policy is favorable, then only it can happen. Now, whatever, and financial literacy as well as all kind of this literacy is also so much required, because what we are seeing is that, we're talking about registration, but how to register would be so difficult for these women. So in that case also some kind of facilitation. So every time if some kind of facilitation is done, women can grow, and that is when they can definitely grow. So this is something which we have learned, and this is a very simple thing I am saying, but it is very important. This is what we have seen.
Thank you, ma'am, first of all, for, in fact, you have handed back 1 extra minute to the organizers with your 4-minute speech. So therefore, I'm going to use that time to ask you a question. You said NABARD and RBI played very important roles initially in helping these SHGs, women-led self-help groups. And you made a remark in the end that even this process of registration can be daunting for women. So what are the specific steps that you would want to see? Should it be in local languages, or is there something specific that you are looking for in terms of support? We are not hearing you. You have to unmute your mic.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So now even they have understood digital services. So some kind of, but of course it has to be simple. Some simple method that, how step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. If that can be given, then it can be done through digital literacy also.
Is language, are these registration methods and measures and steps, are they available in all languages, local languages, or is it only in English and Hindi?
Well, now it is only local languages also, so that can be done.
Okay. So let me just quickly see if there are any specific questions. If I may ask you one more question, ma'am. In your perception, how can rural women switch from agriculture to agro-based enterprises through self-help groups? And how can they add value to their products such that they become self-reliant?
Well, one thing is that, value addition in terms of processing, like, even if they are making food grains, if that can be processed at one step. The second step, which is there, that often, these equipments, agricultural equipments are not available, or they are not able to, use it. So in that case, what we have done is that we have done library of equipments, and all those women are using that, and of course it is hiring, so they can give rent also. So some kind of those kind of equipments are given to them, some kind of hand-holding support is given to them, then they can immediately work on it.
Okay. So I'm going to come back later, ma'am, just to give you some heads up, to ask you about the networking effect among women entrepreneurs, and how does SEWA Bank facilitate it, etc. But I will hold this question for later discussion. It's my pleasure to invite Ms. Vaishali Nigam Sinha to address the evening. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me? Okay, fine, great.
Yeah, we're hearing you well.
Distinguished guests, panelists, I must say that the topic is a very apt one. The comments which have been made by Ms. Upadhyay, and my co-panelist, Ms. Vyas, are extremely informative, and I think discussions like this really make it possible for all of us to think about what needs to be done to ensure that the ecosystem for women-led businesses, whether it's in rural India or whether it is in urban India, gets attention, and can keep building on it and refining. So thank you to Krea for organizing this as well. I was also asked to speak a little bit on, how my organization has responded to the challenges posed during COVID times, but I don't see it being very relevant for this conversation. So I just want to make sure that it's not something, you want me to speak about, because then I'll go to the key issue which we are talking about right now, which is, how can, what exactly needs to be done with respect to, I guess, encouraging women in this field, and how can we kind of ensure that the ecosystem is in order to make it more attractive for women to participate in this whole area of enterprise development. Would that be reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. So, I would say that in my view, the biggest issue which, I have seen women face, and let me just step back and tell you a little bit about what, I do as it pertains to, working with women in rural India. So Renew Power, which is the company I represent, is India's largest renewable energy company, and a large part of our business is based in remote parts of the country, and we engage our communities, and as we do that, we prioritize engagement of women, because we do believe that if you engage a woman, you engage the entire ecosystem of family members. So we run a program called the Rewin program, which is a women entrepreneurship program, where the idea is to ensure that we go to local areas and engage women in areas where they are familiar with the areas we will be engaging. It's not like bringing in stuff from the urban areas and taking it to rural areas, but identifying areas which they're comfortable with. And we've seen that the minute you do that, there is, sort of a quick connect with us and the women. And, otherwise it's quite difficult given the remote location of a lot of these women. I think there are a lot of barriers with respect to geographical barriers, communication barriers, engagement barriers, a lot of the women in rural India face. So the minute you go and become like them, you get a lot of engagement. Engaging them is critical. And once they get engaged, we've seen that women are like, they are full of energy and power, and they can kind of really outdo anybody to get their stuff done. So we've been working on very small projects, and the kind of energy and the amount of enterprise we've seen, whether it is with respect to gathering information, whether it's with respect to kind of grooming themselves, and the desire to get trained, the desire to learn, the desire to meet women, and they really do want to meet women who kind of, if I could say, walk and talk like them. So, and that is very effective. So I think just understanding the nuances of how we can engage, I think, with some of these women in the rural area is very important. Also making it easy for them to understand what are the critical qualities to succeed, the work ethic, etc., in terms of ensuring that they know that financing is important, independent financing, not related to the larger family or their spouse's account or operating out of their account, just to have that independence and knowledge of understanding business management, etc., is an important part of what we do. Very
you have 1 more minute, please.
Yeah, sure. And so, of course, skilling is critical. Just making sure that they know, the products they are working on need to be marketable. So helping them understand that market linkages is not subservient, but is a priority as well. Cultural issues of the ecosystem with respect to making sure that their families and people in the ecosystem understand what they need to do to be successful and to be able to get their support as they go about running their enterprises. The ability to market themselves and prioritize themselves over the rest of the stuff which they do is very important. I think the cultural context in rural India is working on that is critical, because women tend to be more active in domestic issues, and there's not a lot of, I would say, priority given to women who want to become entrepreneurs. So if we can work on a lot of these, I think greater information sharing, if the government sort of departments can provide support, also in ensuring that the extended ecosystem also gets some sort of training and realignment to support women, I think their task will become much easier. I'll be happy to talk later on other issues, but I think this kind of support which we need to provide to women-led businesses in rural India is a little bit different from what we would provide in urban areas, etc. So I wanted to bring out this fine nuance in my opening comments. I'm happy to take questions later on.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for your remarks. So there are a couple of points that you made towards the end. I'm going to take them up later, but one point right away, so that the context is not lost. You mentioned about the distinction between rural and urban women enterprises, and is CII coming up with any training initiatives specifically to help rural women to understand the nuances of marketing, finance, sales, distribution, all those things? Is there something that's happening already?
Absolutely, and there's a very impressive program. I am sure some of you might have heard of it. It's called the Women's Exemplar program, and it's a program which basically works with women in rural India. And so it's a very systematically run program where there is a lot of capacity building, there's training. It's a very sort of competitive program to engage women from across the country, from states where women are not kind of in the radar screen, like the Northeast, etc. So very structured program, and it includes as I said, training, grooming, and all the other skills which are required, mentorship, networking, all these things which are important to get ahead when you're setting up your business. So yes, CII does have this program, and of course conferences to ensure that women get to interact with other women. And I want to emphasize that in rural India, it's about other women who don't intimidate some of these women. That's very important. That's been our observation, that we have to ensure that they're like-minded kind of women who engage.
Thank you so much for those observations. We will get back and have more questions to ask you later. And it's my pleasure now to invite Ms. Deepthi Ravula to share her initial remarks with the audience. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for having me part of the panel. To start out with, I am the CEO for WeHub, which stands for Women Entrepreneurs Hub, which is a Government of Telangana initiative to promote and foster women entrepreneurship. And we run multiple programs, and one of the main things that we are running is access to government. So we actually enable women entrepreneurs across the spectrum without differentiating urban or rural to understand and operationalize the government schemes. And funding and debt funding and credit linkages is a big part of what we do. And we also make sure that the central and state government schemes are operationalized by us. That is the first thing that we do. And the second thing we do as WeHub is also we run a very active incubation program, and we run two kinds of incubation programs. One is the urban tech-enabled entrepreneurship that is so needed to create role models for getting more girls into STEM and the urban side of things. And on the rural side of things, we actually run a very unique, I would not say unique, but a program which is called as Project Her and Now in association with GIZ. And the focus of this program is to take women entrepreneurs and run them through an incubation and acceleration program from the tier 2 and tier 3 parts of Telangana. As of now, it's in Telangana.
Can you please repeat the name of the project? What?
Project Her and Now. It's called Project Her and Now, but we call it as Project Her and Now because it can go either way. And the focus here is to make sure that we are working with women entrepreneurs only in the tier 2 and tier 3 parts of Telangana. And to start out with that, what we did is we made sure that we are not taking entrepreneurs 90-kilometer radius of Hyderabad, because there are so many districts which are out of Hyderabad, which are also part of Hyderabad, but they come under a different district. And second thing, WeHub is not into the livelihood, sustenance, supplemental incomes kind of scope at all. We are not looking for women who have learned a skill and are trying to create avenues for supplemental incomes to be part of this program. Number 3, what we've done is that we have conducted boot camps last year in 7 different districts of Telangana, and the participation was 3,500 women. All of these were women from SHGs and women who've been through various skilling initiatives of the central and the state government. And not surprisingly, after a lot of screening, we found 30 women out of the 3,500 women who applied to be actually entrepreneurs. And they are from places as far as 150, 200 kilometers from Hyderabad. And we've created a special cohort for them. 19 of these women were selected for incubation. When you talk about incubation, it starts from as basic as, understanding what they're doing is entrepreneurship, giving them that understanding. Second thing, getting their enterprises registers, as Madam was mentioning, and also Ms. Vyas was talking about. Number 3, making them realize what being an entrepreneur and a women-led enterprise means. Number 4, teaching them the nuances of finances. Number 5, teaching them taxation and all that, again in a local language. So whenever Alka ma'am was talking about it, and also ma'am Jayshree was referring to it, it gave me immense pleasure to say that we are already doing all this in Telugu. And the most important thing is we have these 30 women from different parts of Telangana. And the beauty is that we actually go to wherever they are and we find a local mentor for them. We connect them to the local DIC, we connect them to the local bank, and we make sure that the district administration is working with us to take that women entrepreneur forward. It is an extremely high-touch model, and we kept the program really small because we wanted to see how high-touch interventions will enable these women to go forward. And the sectors that were purely identified were, as we mostly know, it was food processing, it was Agri, it was also a lot of handicrafts and textiles, and also interestingly nutraceuticals. So a lot of the Agri businesses which were running, we moved them also into the nutraceutical side of things. And we also looked at food processing, which was like, dehydrated vegetables, and also cold press oils, which were made in the traditional manner. In Telugu, we call it as ganuga, which means oxen, the cold press oil is the traditional method. What we've done is we've actually changed her entire business. That lady was not having any concept of what was coming in and what was going out. So we taught her how to do bookkeeping. She started out with just writing on books, but now she enters everything in an Excel, and she's actually opened salary accounts for about 6 of her employees. So these are the basic things that we did last year. This year, ma'am, we are expanding this program to 18 districts. And we are actually going to be doing it in such a way that every district has a separate cohort. And every district is focusing on a separate entity also, like cluster based. That is one.
One more minute, ma'am.
Yes, of course. And the second thing we are also doing is for the agripreneurship initiative that we are all talking about, food processing, we are extensively looking at creating semi-automated units for food processing, as Madam Vyas was just mentioning, manufacturing or processing at source and providing cold storage and so many other facilities that are there. And last year, that is the second thing. Third thing we are also doing is whatever we are talking about, like, presentation, financial inclusion, taxation, everything, we have actually found mentors for each of the women we have identified. I will not call rural entrepreneurs. These are entrepreneurs, just so they happen to be in a space which is different from where we are all. So we've actually made sure that, we've created a curated program for each of these entrepreneurs. And the next thing is, we are going to be scaling this up to 18 districts and taking close to 120 entrepreneurs in our second cohort of this program. Yeah. But yeah, we can talk more as we go along.
Yes, that's wonderful. In fact, your energy and enthusiasm for what you are doing came through very well in your remarks. That's very heartening to hear. So, in fact, it is also good to note that you said your program doesn't distinguish between urban and rural women, if I heard you right. Okay. I think you're on mute. So, did you find any difference between rural and urban women in terms of the performance, the adoption of entrepreneurship? So what was the striking difference, 1 or 2 points that you might have noticed?
So one of the key things that we have actually noticed with in terms of rural entrepreneurs is that once they committed to the program. With urban entrepreneurs, we had to do a lot more hand-holding and, I think it was one thing. And the second difference was that in terms of signatory rights and things like that, when women were applying for loans from the rural side of things, many times husbands wanted the business to be on their name and, run the entire thing. But once we got the women through this program, they were actually saying that, we want to own it and we want to understand how to work with money. So I think beneath everything, women are all the same. I think entrepreneurs are all the same. It just needs a lot of hand-holding and mentoring that needs to be done. And I think we are very happy as a government entity to be hand-holding and walking with them throughout the journey. But not major differences, just commitment issues.
Oh, excellent. So I think that, in fact, we have lots of questions to ask you, given that you are working hands-on with entrepreneurs in multiple districts. So I think we'll come back to you later for more questions. Thank you so much for your remarks. So now the podium is handed over to Ms. Ross Bent for his remarks on how World Bank and the AFC are advancing the cause of women entrepreneurship. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Honored moderator, honored additional secretary, dear distinguished panelists and honorable speaker, participants. Since we have 5 minutes, I'm afraid I may talk too fast, so the moderator, you're always welcome to calm me and slow me down if needed. 2 entry comments. One, it is, I have the advantage, my mother had a PhD in physics, and she did the degree in physics in the 50s, when it was very rare for women to do such a thing. So I have not only do I have a role model, but I think it's the experience, therefore, it's crucial that actually it would be great for many other women to have, or men actually to see their role model. And that's perhaps the mindset. The second is, I worked in Hungary in 1983, when Hungary was still part of the Eastern Bloc, and the economy was in shambles. And it was that time I got fully convinced of Schumpeter's entrepreneurial dynamics and the need actually for private entrepreneurship actually to help economies grow. And so that experience really has stayed with me actually all these years. So I'm going to give you 3 theses, more from a philosophical level. Less, I appreciate what's so deeply is just really shared with us very practically. So I need to find something else. So one, it is, if we're going to help rural women enterprises become sustainable, and if we're going to do it in a very scalable fashion, it needs to be a commercial. So commercial sustainability and outreach go together. And as much as the government wants to do, it will always have limited funds. So how do we get that sweet spot, the win-win between the commercial approach yet helping women? Therefore, the next 2 hypotheses. 1, women are a good business proposition. It's just many men don't see it. And so when I talk to many men, bankers, they say, well, of course I want to finance women, just where are they? Show them to me. And so what the challenge we're facing, and where my colleagues, we have Amit and Puna on the line, is actually within the self-help groups, there are many great women entrepreneurs ready for graduation, but they don't have the credit history. So one thing we're trying to do is now, through a more difficult data crunching exercise, come up with ways to show actually good entrepreneurial behavior within a individual good entrepreneurship behavior within a self-help group, so that then they have a credit history which makes them least bankable. There are other things, as the secretary said, about working with value chains. And so how do you actually, that's part of the business proposition. How do you make that business proposition clearer? We've seen great women agent banking. That's another option. So, but that's really hypothesis, how to show it to men. They're actually good women businesses. The third part is something that was already alluded to. So hypothesis 3, women are a good business proposition. It's just the women don't believe it. And so this brings us always to the confidence. Women lack the confidence, they lack the history, they lack the role models actually to make them believe they themselves can do it. And so, pardon me, so there are of course the many great women, and as I said, my mother's one of them. There's many ways of doing it. There was a question about how best to train them. I'm personally a fan of entrepreneurship training. So not so much business skills, but that's the thing what Deepti and others are doing, is help them just understand what it is to take risks, what it is actually to have courage, what it is actually to spot markets. So the essential entrepreneurial skills, and this can be done very simply without long training. Yeah, let me start there. So 3 hypotheses to challenge the panelists and the participants.
That was very, very efficient, actually, Mr. Ben. Thank you so much. From your, you kind of kept your remarks to 3 key points. So in order to make women businesses, women-run businesses sustainable and scalable, you said they also have to be commercial. Did I hear you right?
Yes, okay. But the approach to promoting them needs to be needs to be commercial. Sustainable.
But have you faced difficulties in convincing entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in the countries you have worked with, that do they have difficulty in understanding the for-profit model? Did I understand you right?
No, I think it's more as Deepti said. So there are many women in self-help groups who do their additional livelihood activities. That's one thing. Becoming an entrepreneur is a different thing. Not every member of a self-help group is ready really to become an entrepreneur. So a filtering is needed, or perhaps training to understand really what it takes. And that was the intent.
Okay. So, and also you mentioned about your experience in Hungary in the early 1980s. It taught you some lessons about private entrepreneurship and its importance. Did I hear you right?
Exactly. That was the message, that the experience that the government or centrally planned economies don't work. It is really the individual, the entrepreneurship, the motivation of profit, of making more money, which actually greatly helps innovation. So Schumpeter thought of it more in the sense of innovation, but it's also in the end, how do you actually help growth? How do you stimulate economic growth? And that requires individual initiative and creativity.
Thank you. So I'm going to come back to you later to talk about some specific interesting experiences and insights from different countries that you might have worked with in the region, or in India itself, with women entrepreneurship in particular. So now I'm going to ask some questions of the panelists. My first question goes to Jayshree ma'am, and as you know, a SEWA bank, you must be working with institutions like SIDBI. Is there something that you think they can do specifically to encourage or to ensure access to finance for women entrepreneurs? That's my question number 1 to you. And the question number 2 is, how does SEWA Bank help its women entrepreneurial clients to network among themselves and understand and reap the advantages of synergy and information sharing? Jayshree ma'am, you are on mute now. Did you hear my question? Maybe she was not in the... Well, I don't know if she has taken a break from the panel for the moment. So let me come to Ms. Vaishali for my question.
Sorry, I am unmuted.
So did you hear my two questions, ma'am?
Yes, I did hear it. The
Okay.
first question, yeah, SIDBI, yes, we are working with SIDBI, and we had, for bigger entrepreneurs, for us, bigger entrepreneurs means those who have a working capital of around 20 lakhs. So what we had done was that, we have collaborated with them. One thing what was required was that, we wanted to learn from SIDBI that how do they work with the entrepreneurs. The second thing was also, it was that, our interest rate was a little bit higher and theirs was lower. So we did it on an average basis, and it worked very well actually. So, we have been working on this, then we are collaborating with them. Of course, we have enough savings with us, so we don't have to borrow from them, but we just want to do it to learn it and to get a better interest rate, average interest rate. That was something. The second question you have is about this networking. Actually, we, as SEWA, we started as a union of working informal sector workers. So of course, there's one union, but then there are trade-wise, groups. So what we are doing is that, first of all, for every trade, we are trying to understand that, what kind of difficulties they have and how can they grow their businesses. So then what we are doing is, if there are some difficulties, then we would definitely go to, it's a policy work, and we do go to government or for policy work, and we ensure that, we get a better policy. That's something which we have been working on, and that helps, that really helps us. The second thing is that, of course, they need money, and, they get finance from bank. So that is the other thing that, we have, they have facility with that. And the third thing is that, that if they can, if whatever the capacity building is there, we have both, one is financial literacy and second is business literacy. So, so whatever kind of businesses are there, we provide that kind of literacy, and now we are also providing them digital literacy. So they know that is also they're helping.
So, ma'am, I was also wondering, so I hear you very well on what the institution of SEWA is doing to these entrepreneurs. Because it's a union, you said correctly, to start with. But my interest was on the information synergies between the members of the SEWA bank themselves.
Yes, there are actually there are monthly meetings.
Okay.
Of all of them, and we also have field workers who are working in that area. So,
okay.
So in monthly meetings, they are sharing whatever they have been doing. Okay. And, it is very interesting that these women are sharing so much that sometimes, we are asking, oh, you are competing with them, and why are you telling, whatever your things to them? But they are saying they're less competitive. I don't know whether it's good or better, good or bad, but, that is what is happening. And then everybody is learning from each other. Finally, what we did was that we could have one portal where they can see that, if there is a need. It was also happening that, somebody is doing embroidery work, somebody is doing marketing in that area. Yeah. So, that then they will be linked with each other. So
exactly. So that's wonderful to hear. Actually, that kind of synergizing is going on already. So I'm going to.
I'm not hearing now.
I'm going to move on to Ms. Vaishali.
Can I just give one answer to Mr. Rolf? His name is.
Please, go ahead, please.
Yeah, because he was saying that our women, all women's entrepreneurs are doing profit or sustainable. I just want to say 500 rupees to now we have been lending to 5 lakh rupees to them and cash credit. But the thing is that we have 500,000 women. Some are, of course, all are not entrepreneurs. Some are doing some economic activities, but they are economically active. So for 46 years, we have been. One thing is that we have been profitable. We can be profitable only when they are profitable. And the second thing is that the recovery rate is 99%. So that means, I'm just saying in a in larger way, but yes, women are profitable. That's what I would say.
Can I just respond to that?
Please. Yeah, please.
That is, women are fantastic business. It's just most men bankers don't know it.
Yeah, that is why we have a women's bank.
Mr. Ben made 2 points. One is men don't appreciate it enough, and he said women themselves lack belief about their potential as entrepreneurs. I think that's a point I want to come back to him later on. I'm going to quickly move on to Ms. Vaishali Nigam Sinha. So one of the things that we all notice, whether it is a man or a woman who runs a small enterprise, it's about access to finance, and that is a working capital, which is usually held back by the large buyers who buy from MSME suppliers. So we all know in India about the TREADS initiative, the Trade Receivable Exchange and so on, but it is actually, even though many businesses have registered themselves, they don't pay through TREADS. So unless they acknowledge an invoice on the TREADS platform, they can't be discounted by the MSME suppliers. So what is it that CII is doing to ensure that its large members are actually participating in TREADS and enabling the small businesses to get their bills discounted and get the working capital access much faster?
Honestly, I would say I'm not, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer that question, because I'm not looking at that aspect of what CII is doing. However, I'll be happy to talk about probably the larger policy issues that need to be probably plugged to make sure that, women are more successful.
Sure. Just quickly, you may please share with us what you thought on the policy issue that need to be addressed. Yeah.
And I just wanted to also mention to Rolf that I do agree with you that women may not be as confident as they need to be. You made a provocative statement there, so I just feel like I need to. But the fact that men don't know what women are doing or are capable of doing, you'll have to explain it to me on an offline chat. So we'll agree to speak on that later on, okay? No, I think I think there are larger policy issues which will make effectiveness and success of women possible. So I think first of all, it's heartening to see a dominant women-led panel here. That's always encouraging. It's encouraging to see Ms. Upadhyay leading this ministry, which basically is, you need a lot of role modeling, right? Even in rural India, you need a lot of role modeling. And that's what will address Rolf's point everywhere. In urban India, rural India, you really do need more successful women, a woman minister, a woman secretary, a business leader. So I think that is one thing which is required. In addition to that, I think there has to be gender sensitivity. We have to appreciate that it's an area which requires encouragement. So we need to put on the gender lens when we are writing policies. And it brings me back to that if you have women, they are probably more sensitized than men, probably. So we need that sort of lens in policy making. I think making access to, information available to a lot of women in rural areas, as one of my co-panelists mentioned, local sort of information in local dialect is going to be very helpful. And of course, all the training, capacity building associated with being self-reliant and being a...
Ma'am, you must excuse me for interrupting your remarks because I just want to quickly move on to some other, quite a few questions are here. So if I may kind of take the liberty of summarizing the 3 points you made. One is you need role models, and second, you need gender sensitivity when rules and legislations are framed. And the third one is the local language. So if you have more points from the policy perspective, I'll come back to you later in the panel discussion, ma'am. Thank you for those remarks. Actually, I'm going to move on to Ms. Deepti Rawla. Here is an interesting question from someone who doesn't identify himself, but asked the question himself or herself, to be precise. In general, isn't it kind of paradoxical trying to promote private business through government intervention?
I'm super happy that this question came about because when a government gets involved in any kind of entrepreneurship initiative, ma'am, respectfully, Madam Alka, you can, if you would excuse me here, it is mostly seen as what are we getting out of this? How much land will you give? How much loan will you give? It is like a Dena scheme. I don't know. I think it's a bank also. It is not that I'm referring to. But one thing what we've done at WeHub through our program is that the first line we say, we are not here to give you money, grants, or any kind of land. That is one thing we've made it very clear. So all we are telling the entrepreneur is that we are building the entire skill set that is needed to be an entrepreneur with an existing business that they have. And then we don't even promote them to the banks. When we say we help with credit linkages, it does not mean we become their advocate with the bank. What we do is we become consultants to the entrepreneur for them to understand how to create a DPR. Why are you asking for the financials? Like, let's say an entrepreneur feels in the, ma'am, before this, under the CGTMSC, if you got a 2 crore collateral free loan, why don't they take the whole of it? So that was the question that they were asking when they in fact only needed 35 lakhs. So what we are doing is we are not promoting private businesses. We are ensuring that the entrepreneurial mindset is built in the entrepreneur with the kind of seriousness that is needed, number one. Second thing, the concept of entrepreneurship is, while money making and adding to the economy is one, generating employment is an ethos we drill very much into our entrepreneurs, and having that ownership is what we are creating. So I would respectfully disagree here that we are not promoting private businesses. We are promoting women entrepreneurs to economically be enabled so that the concept of empowerment comes into play. Yes, ma'am.
So I think Ms. Alka Upadhyay has a point to make here. Please, ma'am, please go ahead.
So, Deepthi, extremely happy to hear the spirit of your remark. And I totally agree with you. You do not give them a pie of, a material component, but it is the pie of confidence, which is very, very important. And this is the reason why we have also been always advocating that while our, NRLM is doing such big things. So I'll just give you a figure. While the NRLM budget outlay is a measly 10,000 crores per annum, and that too is increased now, or 12,000 crores per year, the credit mobilization that happens per year is around 50 to 60,000 crores per year. So, and this 10,000 we are spending on skilling, we're spending on capacity building, motivation, so on and so forth, various social causes. So it is that particular step which Deepthi has talked about, which is most important. And I think that is the route that we will have to follow. So I just wanted to compliment her on her thinking and reiterate what we need to do.
Thank you, ma'am. Our question is to Mr. Rolf Band. In your experience, what are the important lessons you have learned from different countries that India could adopt, or women entrepreneurs in India could usefully learn from within the region or in any part of the world?
So one example is one challenge is actually to convince male bankers that women banking is a profitable business. And this goes to what we discussed. So it's great what SEWA is doing, but it's like, if we really want to reach all women entrepreneurs, we need all banks to address it. And this, of course, we worked in Jordan, which is where women have very few accounts, but we did manage to help them. And that was, I think, Biblos Bank, where they actually made it a very profitable business. So it's a case of working with bankers, showing them actually that women banking is a win-win. It's a win for non-profits, a win for one generation. A second example we're doing in Bangladesh, where it's just purely about giving women a bank account and empowering them. And so for women actually not having to have, this was a project we did with textile factories. Instead of the money, giving them cash, the women handing over the cash to the husband at the end of the month, giving women a mobile bank account so that they had the money in their account and they could use it at the market when they wanted to, was already a huge empowerment, and actually just help greatly build the confidence and sense this is my money and I spend my money how I want to. So two very different but simple examples.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And actually, I'm going to ask you one question before I move on to the other panelists. When it comes to financial literacy in general, even, not even, most market participants, whether they are men or women, have been have been found to be not so rational when it comes to investing in the marketplace. That it is actually across gender. But when it comes to entrepreneurship or enterprise management in particular, have you found that women are far better in terms of financial management and in terms of investing for the future rather than male entrepreneurs, or is there no difference?
I think that women are just generally more cautious, so they're more risk adverse, which is actually good because therefore they spend their money more cautiously, they invest more cautiously, and when they do it more sensibly. So men are sometimes more gamblers, not all of them to emphasize.
Sure.
But that makes them actually very reliable clients for banks.
From the banking perspective. So I'm actually going to go back to Ms. Jayshree Vyas, ma'am. And my question to you, ma'am, based on his comment about women being more, therefore, prudent and cautious and responsible with their money, does it also mean that would they lack ambition to grow their businesses? Would they stay small?
No, one is that, they have basic instinct to save. So often, even if they have, earned something, they would put little money on for the savings. The second thing is that they are planning for the future, particularly for the children. And that, they now, of course, they were not literate, but now they want their daughters to educate. And so they are putting that money for education of daughters. But otherwise, yes, they are spending, they are using money for the businesses also, but they do save and they plan for, future of their family members.
So thank you, ma'am. So I'm going to come back to Ms. Deepti Ravla. One of the questions that has popped up here on the screen is, if women entrepreneurs are indeed successful and they are driving the business forward, etc., how do they then manage the challenges of stereotypes at home and about their roles at home, etc.? And to some extent, that's the WeHub, does it sort of help them handle that and tackle that and also continue to be able to focus on that? Or is there any situation that has arisen? What are your thoughts on that?
So respectfully, we focus primarily on the entrepreneur being the entrepreneur and her product being the product. And we do not explicitly come out and say that, unpaid domestic work and all that. We talk a little bit about it, but as an incubator set up to promote.
No, it was not a question about unpaid domestic help, but women entrepreneurs having dual roles. They're also members of the family, and they have the stereotypical responsibilities which the male society imposes on them. So how do you help them navigate this? That was the question. Okay.
It is quite very simple. To start out with, when we take the entrepreneurs into the program, we actually make sure, not in the COVID times, but when the cohort was launched, we made sure that, the family or whoever was important or the caretakers in the family were part of the initiation and also the induction program, so that the entire family saw what the entrepreneur actually got into. And, that kind of aspiration was created not just for the entrepreneur, but also for the entire family to understand that what she's doing is quite important and there will be long-term financial and also societal benefits because these are rural entrepreneurs, right? And that is number one. Second thing is we made sure that these entrepreneurs were interacting with the district collectors and DMs, and that kind of raised their aspirations and ambitions also.
Very good.
Number three, what we did is we kind of constantly do like a once in 6 week kind of check-in with the family members together, not to like preach them about how to run their family units because everybody's family structures are different, but more in terms of updating them on the progress that the entrepreneur herself has made. And that I think has a long-term benefit, and it has actually made the entrepreneurs more comfortable with like saying, I have to go do this or I have to go do that without explaining themselves a lot. And they themselves have come back and said that my family is a lot more encouraging and my children are also participating in my journey now. So I think that's been something good. So we actually involve the entire unit instead of trying to just train the entrepreneur because, whatever we say, everybody has to come together to take them forward.
I'm going to stay with you for one more question. That's how old is VHub?
VHub is, can you guess how old VHub is? It's not, just kidding. It's only about 2.5 years old. We were
Okay.
actually only conceptualized in 2017 during the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, which was held in
Right.
Hyderabad.
And is there a similar outfit in other states in India?
No, as a startup state and as a new state, we are the only state who have this, and we want to make sure that Madam Upadhyay also meets with us and makes it as a best practice for other things to do.
Oh, absolutely. In fact,
One more
yeah.
small addition.
Please, yeah.
While VHub is a state of government of Telangana initiative, you will be happy to know that we work with state governments in 3 different states, including the Northeast, and we are also our incubatees for the tech-enabled entrepreneurship program are from 16 different cities in India. So
That's
while we are
excellent.
community, we are for the entire country.
So in some sense, you are also sort of indirectly or directly motivating other states to start similar setups.
Yes. We want to slowly, like, instead of talking about how
Okay.
things need to be changed, we are hoping that we can do some best practice models and, that can be replicated.
Okay. So one of the questions, but I think it's probably meant to all the panelists. Therefore, whoever wants to answer it can. So post-COVID, have you seen any different pattern emerging of women entrepreneurs dropping out from the on the entrepreneurial journey more than male entrepreneurs, or is there no difference? I'm not directing it to any one particular panel, but whoever has the experience of it, please come forward to answer this.
Can we say?
Yeah.
On the contrary, they have become more alert about this, and they want to even expand their businesses because they have seen that what happened during the COVID period. So
Okay.
and they have started some new like, of course, mask making and those kinds of things also. But now they have become more alert.
Okay. Ms. Deepti Ravla, do you have any points to say on that?
A lot. So I will just follow up and agree with what Ms. Vyas has said. Yes, initially during the March 2nd, 3rd week, there was a lot of apprehension, and the entrepreneurs were actually, the food entrepreneurs were doing great, but everybody else, their business was just downhill. But then in the meanwhile, what they've actually done is that, again, we never give any money, we never give any grants, we don't do anything at all like that. That has been a principle for us. But what we've seen is that these entrepreneurs have used this time to actually create a template about what their business is, understand how to do PowerPoint, and this downtime has actually been utilized by them like that. Number two, agreeing to what Ms. Vyas said, we have an entrepreneur who actually was only supplying to her local Mehboob Nagar, which is about 170 kilometers from Hyderabad. Now, due to the lockdown and the kind of spotlight we brought on the entrepreneurs, she now has orders from Hyderabad also, and her cold press oils are actually priced at 450 rupees a liter. And in spite of that, there is a 2-week wait time for people to get the things. So I think most of the entrepreneurs have actually scaled quite well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go back to Ms. Vaishali Nigam Sinha. If I'm not mistaken, I heard you many times mention about CII and training initiatives for women entrepreneurs. Are these training initiatives taken from pre-existing training modules for bigger businesses, or are they tailor-made specifically looking at what rural and women entrepreneurs would need, or is it off the shelf, or is it custom made?
Yeah, no. So the work which is being done at CII is very customized. As I said, it's a pan-India initiative. So, there are different cultures. There's a different level of entrepreneurship. If you see in different parts if you look at what's there in Maharashtra versus what's there in another part, there's a huge amount of difference. So I think the engagement is very local. It is very specific to what women need, the level of engagement and training and skilling they need. And so, yeah, the Exemplar program is very customized. I think what CI is also trying to do is to help these entrepreneurs develop linkages with the local governments in the area vicinity, the local businesses or the larger businesses which operate in the vicinity. I personally would like to also say that there's a huge amount of opportunity in the supply chain. I think we all need to also think about that. How can we engage women in the supply chain, and how can we incentivize businesses, large businesses, to ensure that they are given incentives to work with women led entrepreneur.
Okay.
So yeah, I think these are some of the things.
Thank you.
They are also looking at some of these fairs, local fairs, where women can be involved.
Yeah.
So I see we're running out of time, but yeah, so a lot of these mentorship kind of activities, grooming kind of activities, and linkages. I think these are the priority areas we are working on.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm going to request all the panelists only just one statements each, because we have Ms. Alka Upadhyay here from the government, and one message for the women entrepreneurs themselves. So first, Ms. Jayshree Vyas. So one message for the women entrepreneurs and one request or one idea, whatever it is, for the government. Ms. Jayshree Vyas, please.
Yes. Just keep on learning and growing, because unless you will learn more, you will not be able to grow.
Any message for the government, or you are happy? Nothing to say?
No, I think government does giving some kind of handholding support, and whenever policy is required to be changed, can help us in changing it.
Thank you. Mr. Rolf Berendt, I wanted to come back to you on many interesting points we made, but maybe some other time I should do that. But please, your closing remarks.
Okay, for the women, it is just on the same message: courage, continue learning, just try. There's nothing better than failure to for the next success. For the government, I think it is more to promote women as business rather than as a social need. And it's just better to provide really great role models. Yes, no, that's it. Let me stop.
Thank you, Mr. Brent. Ms. Vaishali Nigam Sinha, you have any quick last message?
Well, I'd like to say an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. Never mind whether you are a male or a female entrepreneur. I think you require that spirit. I just feel that women have to go and do what it takes for an entrepreneur to make a venture successful. So with that spirit, I think sky is the limit. And I'd also encourage the government and the corporates to prioritize and also be incentivized to support women entrepreneurs, because they make better entrepreneurs.
Okay, thank you. It is somewhat appropriate that I should leave the last word with Ms. Deepti Rawala, because the dynamism of her WeHub initiative and her own enthusiasm was pretty evident in her remarks. So what are your messages, please?
So for the entrepreneurs, it's quite simple. The days of talking about opportunities being available or not is gone. I think there are now that I see there are lots of opportunities available, and there are a lot of avenues also available to be utilized. So please utilize the avenues that are there. Grab the opportunities. Let's not go back and talk about how there is nothing ready. So it's time to be better prepared, better researched, and come to WeHub. I think product placement. And coming down to the side of things, when can we start working together? I think that's all it is.
That's wonderful. I think the Union government definitely heard your remarks and the enthusiasm with which you voiced them. So I'm now going to hand over the stage to Ms. Subbalakshmi Nandi, Senior Program Officer, Gender Equality, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for her closing remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Anantha. This has been such an honor and privilege to be part of this panel. And I'm also really grateful for the partnership we've had over the last 3 webinars, because this is the last of the 3 in a series. And I think there is no way I'm going to summarize or, sort of provide any kind of concluding comments of that nature. I just want to highlight a few principles that stood out for me in all the 3 webinars, and especially today. And I'll start where actually Alka ma'am started. She was trying to draw our attention to who is this entrepreneur we are talking about. And she was talking about the rural woman. She was talking about the farmer. She was talking also about, the wage worker. At the end of the day, I think when we are talking about rural women's entrepreneurship, we must keep in mind the very specific context in which a rural woman entrepreneur operates, with her homestead land, with her livestock, maybe collecting non-timber forest produce and producing, doing some value addition on that, maybe, running a small kirana store, retail store, maybe, even a home-based worker who is producing small baskets and things for the local market. So I think it's really, really important as we move forward in our thinking to keep that in mind. The second thing that Alka ma'am spoke about, and I think many others have touched upon, particularly Jayshree Ben a little bit, is the importance of group-based approaches. Now, what does the self-help group do? It really helps these low-income women to pool their resources, to share their risks, to provide that solidarity. Also, where does that confidence come from? It's not just about the woman herself. It's about her being part of a social network. It's about her being part of a group, a collective, an institution. And I think these are really, really important things for us as principals to keep in mind, because, I mean, in many ways, what I'm talking about is the tenets on which NRLM is, based. And I wanted to highlight again how important these foundational things are about building anything around women's economic empowerment. And we're happy to have partnered with both the ministry, with LEAD, and in both the research and the programming in thinking about this. I think the most important thing I wanted to say is with all of these ideas and analysis, the most important thing for us is also the proof is in the pudding, right? Unless we actually operationalize these ideas, and how do we operationalize this? I think that's really where some of our work is located, whether it is the evidence gaps, do we know enough? Or it's the capacity gaps. Are the people at the state level and at the district level, do they have the understanding or the gender sensitivity or the capacity to facilitate process that can help build stronger institutions? Or is it, the demonstration hand-holding, those are the specifics, I think, that in the implementation and in the actual rollout of these ideas that, we are most interested in and happy to sort of partner on. And I also feel that the other thing that I wanted to say was that, just looking at COVID is something that we know from past experience that health pandemics really increase and aggravate conditions of poverty, unemployment, and informality. We know a little bit of that from the West Africa experience of Ebola. And although in the context of COVID for India, there is not that much research specifically on women entrepreneurs, although now some is emerging and LEAD has been part of some of that as well. I think we can assume that those impacts have been very similar, whether it's income loss, whether it is, dipping into savings, whether it's really breaks in supply chains, which are very difficult to build back, because it's not just a production issue, it's also the market itself has collapsed. So when we're talking about the enterprise ecosystem, I think that's really, really important to keep in mind. So then where do we go from here? And again, I want to draw from something that Alka ma'am said right at the beginning. She spoke about a basket of options that need to be available. And she was talking about, value addition and agri supply chains. She was talking about service enterprises. She also spoke about public works and Narega. And I think when you look at a rural poor entrepreneur's life, it's all of this and more. And therefore, at the end of the day, it's the convergence of all those services. And how do they reach her doorstep is really at the heart of how we will solve for the issues that rural women are experiencing today. So, I mean, I'm also very happy to say that, whether it's in the, rollout of the one-stop facilitation centers through NRETP or the gender resource centers that some states are doing, we are really, really privileged to partner with the NRLM and are really happy to continue this. And I feel, and like I said, the demonstration is really important, the implementation. And to end, I think there is also, and I think that's a lot of people have touched upon the policy issues. I think that's another principle, that alongside the very grassroots intervention, there has to be an understanding of what Jayshree Ben was talking about, financial regulators, do they understand the concerns? She spoke of NABARD and RBI's role in all of this. How can the private sector play an important role and provide leverage for access to markets for these enterprises? Those are the ecosystem players and how we engage with them. I'm hoping LEAD can take the lead to convene us as partners to think more about this as the learnings come out over the next few months and years. And thank you again for this opportunity. And congratulations to NRLM and World Bank and LEAD for this really invigorating series of webinars. It's really been fantastic. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Ms. Nandi, for your remarks. And I think it's been a wonderful session to moderate and participate in. There is a lot of optimism, there is a lot of hope, and there's a lot of faith also in women entrepreneurs making it a success. So hopefully the next year, when we reconvene or whenever it is, we have entrepreneurs' voices themselves that we hear, their success stories and their inspiration for the rest of the community to pick up and sort of replicate themselves into a very strong force for economic and social progress. With that, I'm very happy to have been part of this. Thank you all, and wish you all good luck and success in all the endeavors that you are so enthusiastically pursuing. Thank you. Have a pleasant evening or a good day wherever you are. Thank you.